Hello there, friends, and welcome to episode 288 of Just the Zoo of Us. This week, I am joined by a champion of the reef, a guest who is using her knowledge and passion for marine biology to save the world one polyp at a time. We discuss coral wars and neural nets, aliens from a different version of our own planet, literally reinventing the wheel with coral-inspired biomimicry, what's up with coral bleaching and how we can help, and even surprisingly philosophical questions like, what is an individual? What is the self? And at what point do you have a new body? This episode will change the way you look at a reef and maybe even yourself. Hope you're ready. Just the Zoo of Us presents Corals with Jessie Palmer. Hello, everybody. This is Ellen Weatherford with Just the Zoo of Us, your favorite animal review podcast. I'm so excited this week to have a really cool animal with a really cool new friend. This is Jessie Palmer. Say hi, Jessie.
Hi.
Jessie, what are your pronouns?
She, her, hers.
Thank you so much. I am really excited to talk about this animal that is not only important, but also I feel like is overlooked and tends to kind of fall into the background. So I'm excited to put this animal in the spotlight today. Before we put this animal in the spotlight and give them center stage, let's talk about you. Jessie, how did you get into the work that you do with marine biology?
So I have been interested in the ocean ever since I was little. My parents both scuba dive. They bonded over their love for the ocean. So from birth, I've been obsessed with the ocean. When I was 4, I decided I would be a marine biologist, and I have stuck with that ever since. I've had my little phases where it was like, I'll be a marine biologist and a singer on the side, but it's always marine biologist first and foremost.
Yeah, the marine biologist is really, everything else is like side quests.
Yes, exactly. And I love a side quest. I do a lot.
Don't touch the main quest. No, main quest who? Never heard of her. My oldest son, his big career plan right now is he wants to be a video game developer / cat shelter owner.
Perfect.
So I'm like, you know what? That's it. You got your bases covered. You got your day job. You got your side hustle. Mm-hmm. But I like a marine biologist always being the sort of the lighthouse on the shore of life. You mentioned that both of your parents were scuba divers. I was like, this is a joke, but I was like, not the ocean Nepo baby.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you go scuba diving with your parents as a kid?
No, but I snorkeled a lot.
The gateway to scuba.
Yes, exactly. I got scuba certified at 12 with my brother, who was 10. So we definitely get them all certified early so we can go and do everything. It's so much fun. Oh, I love scuba diving. I wish I got to do it more, but, I live in the Midwest now, and Spokane, where I'm from, is not exactly a hot spot for scuba diving, but I'm still happy to go.
It's like in the desert.
Still happy to dive in rivers and go on hikes where you just find a little, deep pond, and so you're fishing, but you randomly decide to scuba dive a little bit. That's I do it every chance I get, even if it's a little ridiculous.
You'd be surprised how many marine biologists I've talked to that are like, yeah, I'm from a landlocked, I'm 3 states deep. I'm from a desert. Mm-hmm. But the ocean calls us all home.
Yes, exactly.
How did you get into working with these marine invertebrates?
Yeah, so my first love was dolphins. I feel like that's a classic gateway marine biology animal.
Oh, that 90s dolphin aesthetic? That was
yes. Oh my gosh. Lisa Frank dolphins. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yes, I love that so much. But even at a very early age, I loved siphonophores and jellyfish. That is an experience, I think, somewhat unique talking to other scientists. They aren't used to people who knew about siphonophores from age 4 and
I was about to say,
yeah.
If I asked a 4-year-old, hey, what kind of animals do you like? And they said siphonophores, I'd do a double take. I'd be like, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, it would probably be dolphins, jaguars, siphonophores for the nice little
Naturally.
top 3. Yeah,
Naturally.
exactly.
As you do. I was about to ask, like, how on earth did you know about jellyfish and siphonophores when you were 4? But then I was like, oh, it's probably because of your scuba diver parents.
I mean, they didn't know about them at all. My parents they don't work with the ocean or anything like that. Scuba diving is just kind of a hobby.
Appreciators.
Yeah, exactly.
The ocean needs appreciators.
Yeah, I was just a huge bookworm as a kid. I still am. But I would go to the library and just check out way too many books and read everything I could. I love the weird sea life. That's, I feel like, also kind of a universal experience for a marine biologist, is being drawn to all of the strange deep sea creatures. And I was just fascinated by these jellyfish and siphonophores because they've been around for so long and we know very little about them, and they're so weird and unique. I've always been drawn to the odd little creatures, and so that kind of set me off on the path where I'm now at University of Chicago, which is partnered with the Marine Biological Laboratory in Woods Hole, Massachusetts, which is one of the top marine biology institutions in the world, so I love it. I'm a double major in biology, specifically evolutionary biology, and music. Like I said, lots of side quests, so...
What a double major! Wow. What kind of music do you do?
So I play a little bit of piano, play French horn, but mostly I'm a singer and composer. Just this past year, I wrote a musical and put it up at my school. So it's been a lot of, I do a lot of random stuff, but I am almost equally passionate about music and musical theater as I am biology and sea life.
The duality of the human experience.
Yes.
Do you ever combine the two? Like, do ocean-inspired musical projects?
I do. I wrote this choral piece that will certainly never be performed. That is setting the last sentence from Darwin's On the Origin of Species to this extremely complicated, 8-part choral setting. It's a wild song, but I love it, and it's so extremely dorky and so extremely me. I hope to see it performed someday.
You know how people will do those virtual choruses, right? Mm-hmm. Where people will record them all doing it individually and then they just mix them together. I'm saying we got a Discord.
Yes.
We could have a Just the Zoo of Us chorus.
Yes, I would happily take that on. I'm not busy enough.
Yeah, it's not like you have anything else going.
Exactly.
In Chicago, also, y'all have, is it the Shed Aquarium that's in Chicago? That's a very good one, right?
Yeah, I visit every weekend. I have a membership. It's one of my favorite places. There's a couple tiny little fish tanks on campus that I will also go hang out at. But yeah, I love the Shed. I go there all the time.
So what brought you to corals specifically? How did you arrive at corals?
I kind of had a weird circuitous path to get there. In my junior year of high school, I took a class where you develop a research project. And since I want to study siphonophores, the closest you can get as a high schooler are hydra, which are very small individual polyps, sort of like a freshwater sea anemone, but super small. I wanted to do something with hydra. I knew that much, but I didn't know what. My dad suggested I fix coral bleaching, which I thought was pretty ridiculous. Yeah, exactly.
Just fix it.
Exactly. Just solve the whole problem.
How are it gonna be?
I thought it was one of those things that he's not a scientist, and so he just thought, okay, well, fix an ocean problem.
Yeah, here's a problem I know about. Just fix that.
Just fix it. But as I looked into it further, there is coral bleaching caused by bacteria, and since hydra produce these super unique immune system toxins, I wanted to see if one of these toxins could be an antibiotic to fight this specific coral bleaching pathogen. I am now 4.5 years into that project and will be publishing a work in progress paper. It should be out by the time this episode airs.
Wow. But this was a high school project?
Yeah, and it's evolved very far. We
had very different high school experiences.
But yeah, that's how I arrived at corals, because I started with Hydra, and since I wanted to work with coral bleaching, I ended up working with corals. So this past summer at the MBL, I was able to essentially use my antibiotic, infect a bunch of corals with this bacterium, and then try my antibiotic to see if it worked. And it turns out it does. I mean, I'm a scientist, so it's like, I can't conclusively say it works 100%, but you can see if the coral is purple to begin with, and then by the end of the bacteria kind of ravaging it, it's fully white. When you use my antibiotic, it stays the same purple. Like it isn't affected at all. So it's very exciting. And that's kind of how I fell into corals.
Oh my gosh, that is so cool. It's so funny that we were like roasting your dad 2 seconds ago for being like, just fix it. And then you were like, oh, I did actually.
No, all of my papers, all of my posters, he's always the top of the acknowledgements, and it's, yeah, he's great.
I wonder how many problems we've been so daunted by, and like sometimes it is just like, sometimes you can just fix it.
Exactly. I mean, this is one specific form of coral bleaching, but yes, it's a first step potentially, and I'm very excited about it. I'm so glad I had that opportunity at my public high school in Spokane, Washington, to really dive into this project.
See, support your local libraries, support your local schools.
Absolutely.
You know, it takes that little nerdy kid that's into siphonophores, weirdly. Mm-hmm. That little nerdy kid in the library is going to save the world. So let's talk about corals a little bit, because I feel like most people have probably heard of corals. Some people listening may be shocked to find out that they are animals. I feel like a lot of people maybe are a little bit surprised at that fact. So for people who are maybe not super well versed in coral knowledge, what's a coral?
Yeah, corals are animals. They're extremely early animals. So first you have sponges, and then you have cnidaria, which are a lot of things, but they include corals, these very early animals. Essentially, the way a coral works is after an egg is fertilized, it becomes a larva or a planula, and it goes and settles somewhere, and it secretes this sort of rocky skeleton, and then it buds into a little polyp, which individual polyps look sort of like sea anemones, which are also one of those things that people kind of overlook. Corals are these very complex organisms made up of one polyp that clones itself a bunch until it becomes this massive structure. And the kind of most famous part about corals is that they photosynthesize using these algae, essentially, that live inside them. We call them endosymbionts, endo meaning in, and symbionts referring to symbiosis. So if you know about anemones and clownfish, they have a symbiotic relationship, and corals do as well with the algae that live inside them.
If you can't synthesize your own light, then store-bought is fine.
Exactly. So that is how corals get their color. It's from these algae that live inside them. And it's also how a lot of corals get their energy. Like you said, store-bought. So corals are these large structures of polyps, these individual little animals that are all genetically identical. So it's this huge network, and it takes a very, very long time for corals to get big. A little 1-inch segment, it can take a year for it to grow into a little 4-inch segment. And so you've got like the Great Barrier Reef, which took approximately 20 million years to become what it is. Corals take an extremely long time to grow, and you know, some foreshadowing for a later part of this discussion. The Great Barrier Reef took 20 million years approximately to form. It's going to take 10 years to entirely be bleached and dead. It is a very fragile ecosystem.
It's always a lot easier to tear things down than to build them up, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man. So when you are looking at a coral reef, what kind of traits are you looking for to like identify the corals on the reef? Like, do they grow in certain structures or like have a specific color? Like what do you see when you look at a coral reef?
Yeah, so it's a ton of different corals. So you'll have your sea pens, which look like a fancy quill pen. They aren't technically corals, but they are anthozoa. So if you look at all of Cnidaria, this big phylum, like in the way that all chordates are one phylum, so a sea squirt, this little tunicate, this weird little squishy thing, and a human are part of the same phylum. Cnidaria, so jellyfish and corals, are part of the same. Anthozoa, which means flower animal. I just think it's super pretty for corals.
That is pretty.
Yeah, it contains a lot of different animals, including your sea pens and your anemones, and then your corals. So if you look at a reef, you'll have your bright purple sea pens everywhere. You'll have your flat table corals that are these big structures, almost like certain mushrooms, that they're these big flat tables that are typically all green. You'll have a bunch of finger corals that look like little branching fingers.
I like those.
Yeah, they're fun. You'll have bubble corals sometimes that are just so strange looking, just little bubbles. Like, they're very funny. And then your brain corals that are big spheres. You can really tell the difference. They're all very distinct in shape, as well as color often, unless you are at a reef where, unfortunately, a lot of bleaching has occurred. When they've expelled, because they're so stressed out, they've gotten rid of these algae that live inside them, and so they've lost their color. And now they can't photosynthesize and feed. It's a sad state of a lot of reefs that you'll be able to recognize the way that they've been destroyed by bleaching over time.
When you're looking at, because you mentioned that they're colonies of like a cloned polyp over and over again, like the same one just copied and pasted a bunch of times, is that considered one organism? Or do you consider each polyp like an individual organism? Like, at what kind of organizational level are they working on? So here you've touched upon a fun philosophical taxonomical, like, it's a whole thing. Both. The answer is kind of both. That the whole coral is one organism because all of them are contributing to the whole, but also each individual polyp is an organism. In Cnidaria, everything gets weird about what is an individual. Philosophically challenging phylum.
Yes, which I think is wonderful. A lot of jellyfish and hydra and all of these things reproduce asexually in addition to sexually, so they clone themselves. But these two genetically distinct animals are living apart. So if a coral is all one organism, one jellyfish can be one organism with all of these individuals that live all over the world. And with siphonophores, where it's one polyp that starts, and then it asexually reproduces into all of these individual zooids, which have their own function, well, is this one an individual? But all it does is eat. It can't survive on its own. It's genetically the same, but it has a distinct function that can't exist away from the whole. So what is the individual? Siphonophores are often called colonial, but since they all start from one egg and all have to work together, you can think of it like an ant colony, but all of the ants are connected. And so they each have their own job, and they each kind of have their own genetics and do their own thing, and yet they are all necessary for the whole, which is its own organism. It's very complicated. Hey there, if you'd like to learn more about siphonophores, Christian did a segment on them in episode 223 that was on tiger beetles and the giant siphonophore. They are mind-blowing creatures that inspire a lot of very similar philosophical questions as corals. So if you enjoyed that from this episode, go check that one out next. But yeah, there's definitely some debate. I typically will refer to, I refer to the coral as an animal, but each of the polyps is an individual. So you kind of use both in science. You'll refer to the colony as an individual and the polyps as individuals. I guess in an environment like the ocean, where everything that happens is going to have wide-reaching impacts, right? Because of just the medium of water, just spread things around so much that I can't think of very many circumstances under which something would apply to one polyp and not its neighbor, right? Mm-hmm. There's probably no meaningful need to really refer to a single polyp, because if it applies to one, it's probably going to apply to the context of all the other ones too. Well, there's actually some interesting things we can talk about in the ingenuity section, if you would like. Yes. Okay, thank you for that, because that reminded me before I ask you a million questions, which I definitely will find excuses to ask you anyway. But if this is anyone's first time listening to this podcast, our whole deal is that we rate animals out of 10 in different categories, and the first one is effectiveness. This is physical adaptations, things that are built into the animal's body, or in this case, bodies, plural. Maybe they're just like a royal we. They're just we are legion, a sort of hive mind sort of creature. So physical adaptations, things that the animal has built into their bodies to let them thrive in their environments, whether that is take in food or not become food themselves, things like that. Jessie, what do you give corals out of 10 for effectiveness? So it's a bit complicated.
I feel like there's going to be a lot of it's a bit complicated in this
yes,
episode.
Exactly. They've been around for 500 million years, back when Earth had a 22-hour day because it rotated faster, back when the sun was less bright, there was hardly any land because it hadn't all emerged from the ocean, there were no plants on land, the ozone layer was brand new. They've survived all of that time.
A completely different planet. They were on a different planet.
Yes, exactly. And they are able to feed with tentacles that they have, as well as photosynthesizing with the endosymbionts. And since they're Cnidaria, since they're like jellyfish, they have all these stinging cells to protect themselves with. And yet, I feel like I can't give them the highest effectiveness score because, unfortunately, they are very much struggling right now against everything that humans are throwing at them. With rising ocean temperatures, that makes the endosymbionts leave faster because they are stressed out. They can't take the heat. Ocean acidification means that the hard coral skeletons can't form. It is one of those things that is extremely kind of good for jellyfish, since they don't hunt by sight, they can't be fooled by pollution, since they don't have any hard parts of their body, acidification has no effect, and for some reason, a lot of the chemicals we dump into the ocean make jellyfish grow bigger and faster. But
they're like,
for
this
corals,
is great, actually. Thanks for the jellyfish food. Yum, yum, yum.
Yeah. As someone who studies jellyfish, I kind of don't want them to succeed, because if they succeed too much, that means really bad things for all of the ocean.
You're a hater. You're praying for their downfall.
Not entirely. I love them. You know, a world where there are just endless jellyfish in the ocean kind of sounds great, but also it means really bad things for fish and crabs and everything else that lives in the ocean.
They're real divas. They like to hog the spotlight. They don't want anyone else to succeed. They're pulling the ladder out behind them.
Yeah.
Not a girl's girl.
It'll be cockroaches and jellyfish when everything else is gone.
Hey there, I talked a bit more about ocean jellification in our episode on box jellyfish. That was episode 271, so go check that one out if you want to hear more about the jellified future.
So, unfortunately, corals are extremely effective when it comes to an environment that isn't affected by humans. But I am going to give them an effectiveness score of 5 because, unfortunately, being these old, kind of slow-to-evolve organisms, they don't have the ability to survive all of these changing things about our oceans now.
Not their fault.
No.
Not their fault. When you were describing like how different the Earth was, you know, in the early days of Cnidarians and the sort of changes that they would have had to go through, because I'm a big science fiction nerd and I like to read a lot of books about aliens and, you know, how species would evolve on different planets under different like planetary conditions and stuff like that. I like speculative fiction and stuff like that. And a lot of times I feel like in science fiction we like to explore, what would nature look like if it evolved, like you were saying, like with a shorter day or with a different atmospheric condition, and like we already had that. We already did. Like we can see what they look like, and we have them because people like to be like, oh, like octopuses are aliens and they must have like come from a different planet. It's like they could still be aliens from Earth because they adapted to a different planet than we have now. Like it was still Earth, but everything was so different. Like I feel like that changed the way I think about aliens. Like, you can be an alien from Earth because you just adapted to a different planet.
Yeah, octopuses are such an interesting case because a lot of the reason people think that they're aliens is because they have this evolved intelligence that is so different from our own. Because we see, okay, so the evolutionary drivers for intelligence in humans are this and this and this. But for octopus, they live underwater. It's totally different. And so the way their brains work, it's all wildly different. And yet they are of comparable intelligence in whatever way you measure intelligence to human children. They typically put them around like 4 to 7 years old. But since it's a totally different form of intelligence, we don't know how to judge it. It's so, the ocean is so interesting. It's home to so many entirely unique animals that could all sort of be considered alien because they're all so strange and unique. Yeah. And we don't know about most of them. It's wild.
Now, you mentioned something that I didn't know, which is that corals have stinging cells. News to me, because I haven't really like been up close and personal with corals. And definitely anytime I've been out in a situation where I was on a reef, I was maintaining a significant distance from it. I could pretend to be like, it's because I have so much respect for the reef. It's because I'm scared of fish. I didn't want to get
That'll do it.
But I have tried to be very hands off with coral, so I did not know that they had stinging cells. What's going on there? Tell me about this.
So all Cnidaria definitionally have stinging cells. That is what sets them apart from other animals. Like the comb jellies, the reason they aren't Cnidaria is because they have sticky cells instead of stinging cells. So instead of stinging their prey and catching them with little harpoons, they have sticky cells. So they essentially are little suction cups that stick to the prey. It's super interesting. I love all these early weird animals. They're so fun. But yeah, typically, even when you do touch corals, the venom is so weak that you can't really tell that anything has happened. If you've ever been to a tide pool and touched anemones, they obviously close up when you touch them. But the reason they feel sort of sticky is because they've embedded all these little harpoons into you and are like holding on to you.
They're trying to sting you.
They're trying, yeah. They're trying to protect themselves and they're trying to eat you, but the venom is so weak that you can't even tell that's happened. Now, an interesting case is fire coral, which isn't a true coral. It's not an anthozoan. It's a hydrocoral, so it's part of kind of a cousin class to corals. But they have extremely painful stings when you touch them. And so they look like these very delicate, long, branching corals, kind of classic coral shape. And they're very brightly colored, bright oranges, bright reds, which tells you, stay away. But they, like all corals, inject these little harpoons into you, but you will feel them. Their venom is much stronger. So some general advice for Cnidaria stings. Obviously, you talked recently about box jellies. Go to a hospital if you're stung by a box jellyfish. A lot of jellyfish, that is the case. But typically, if you're stung by a fire coral or by a sea nettle or one of these more common jellyfish, you want to rinse with seawater. No fresh water. Do not pee on it. I don't know how this rumor got started, but fresh water will actually stress the cells and make them release more venom. Don't do it. Rinse with seawater. Then use vinegar or isopropyl alcohol, or if you have to, heat to deactivate any of the cells that are left, and then tape to kind of pull out any little fragments. And also keep still. If you move, the venom will move with it. So that's kind of the advice if you touch fire coral or touch a lot of jellyfish. I haven't touched it personally. I've yet to be stung by a jellyfish despite touching all of the ones I see and working with them so closely. Fire coral has a very painful, it's called fire coral. It feels like a burn, which is very unique among corals because most corals haven't evolved to defend themselves this strongly. We don't entirely know why fire corals decided this was a pressure of theirs, but it's super interesting.
How do corals typically protect themselves?
Corals are big and they are mostly essentially rock. They are not very nutritious. There's very little soft tissue. There are fish like parrotfish that will kind of trim corals, but for the most part, they are just, it's like a tree. There are little critters that might eat little bits of the tree, but for the most part, a human isn't going to go around and chomp on a tree. These larger fish, it's...
Speak for yourself, okay?
Oh, yeah, I guess fair enough. It's not especially worth the energy to try to eat these things, because there isn't that much benefit. But also, they didn't evolve having the biggest need to defend themselves because, like we said, 500 million years ago, there weren't fish. Well, obviously evolution has happened since then, and the corals now are not the same as the corals then. They have never really needed to defend themselves in this way. Fire corals, they are much thinner and more delicate, but there are also corals that are also thin and very delicate that haven't felt the need to evolve this way, and it's just because there aren't that many predators for corals. Reefs are host to so many organisms that why would a fish go after a coral when there are a bunch of little fish or crabs or all of these other organisms?
There's tastier stuff nearby.
Yeah, much tastier stuff.
We have on this podcast talked about a couple of critters that I believe will sometimes go for it. I think, is it the crown of thorns starfish?
Yes.
Is that something that has, are you anti-crown of thorns starfish as team coral?
I suppose so. I don't think of myself as anti any animal because they're all just,
everyone's doing their best.
Naturally kind of opportunists. Yeah, exactly. And crown of thorns starfish are very interesting. But yes, these do feed on corals. They feed on a lot of things. So corals haven't, because these recent blooms is the jellyfish term, essentially booms of the population of crown of thorn starfish have led to corals being more pressured by them than they would ordinarily. And evolution is not that fast. The corals would not all evolve defenses to crown of thorn starfish that quickly. But yes, that is one of a few animals that do eat corals.
Are you a Pokemon fan?
I know so much about Pokemon to not be a Pokemon fan. That's kind of how I feel. Like, I've never played a game and I've never been interested in it, but like I have a favorite Pokemon and like all of these random things. So I'm probably familiar.
There is a Pokemon, a coral Pokemon called Corsola, and it is very cute.
I'll have to look that one up. I don't know if
and
I'm familiar
actually
with that
they
one.
did a fun thing. Okay, so are you at least familiar enough to understand evolution in the Pokemon context?
Yes.
It's more like metamorphosis. If I were the one making the game, I would have called it something different and avoided all the unnecessary backlash and controversy associated with using the word evolution. But so there's a Pokemon Corsola, which is based on corals. And then in one of the generations, much, much, much later, they introduced an evolution. First, they introduced the Galarian Corsola in one of the generations, which is ghost type, and it is white.
Oh, I really like that. That's cool.
Ghost type, Galarian Corsola, as opposed to the normal pink, brightly colored water and rock type Corsola. So Galarian Corsola is white, and it is ghost type, and it evolves into Cursola, which is a ghost type Pokemon that has like a broken, empty shell with a sort of ghost of branching structures
that is so cool.
coming out of it. Here, I'll drop a link in the call chat and you can take a quick gander at this little guy. You may find him cool.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool.
Isn't that cool?
How have I not seen this one? I love that. I might have to get I'm sure Pokemon fans would hate me for this. I have a few Pokemon cards that I've turned into bookmarks.
No, that's a cool way to use them.
Yeah, put little like tassels on them and stuff. So I have a few. Relicanth is my favorite because I love coelacanths. And so I have several of those. I might have to get some Cursola. I might have to get some of these.
I actually feel like you just gave me a craft idea because my son has so many Pokemon cards and he has duplicates of a lot of them and he doesn't know what to do with them. So that might be a fun crafting idea.
Yes.
Make little bookmarks out of the... I'm glad you said that. Well, I was thinking about that because also in the games there was there's a Pokemon based on Crown of Thorns Starfish, and in the game they did a fun thing where like the Pokemon would actually like join a battle but against the Corsola, like it was like hunting the Corsola, which you never see any other Pokemon do that.
Wow.
You never really see like interactions in the game of like a wild Pokemon attacking another wild Pokemon, but they would do that, which is how I always remember that Crown of Thorns Starfish is a natural predator of corals.
That is so cool. Yeah, I wasn't aware that they put so much interesting thought, because some of them I've seen are just like a toucan or a flamingo, which I guess, makes sense. But I love that.
I found that interesting. For an animal that doesn't have a lot of mobility in their kit, right? These are animals that, can they move at all? Like, or are they just kind of stuck in one spot?
No, their rocky skeleton does kind of fuse them to one spot.
That will do it.
Yeah.
It reminds me of a barnacle almost. Mm-hmm. Like, once you're in it, you're in it. So how do they get anywhere? Like, how do corals get to a new place?
That's the little planula. Essentially, when they reproduce, a lot of them are during the full moon. They will release eggs and sperm. It's very dramatic. And
cool.
Watching it is really cool. But they will fertilize these little eggs that then become larvae, and they just go find a spot. And part of what I'm studying now in my lab is how they find these spots. We know it's something to do with the bacteria, but we don't know anything about that. So they will just find a spot. The corals themselves can't move, but their offspring can. And so that's part of the reason reefs have such a hard time, because they can't go anywhere. Once they are in a spot that is being ravaged by bacteria or has a lot of pollution, they're stuck. They can't move anywhere. They can hopefully provide a better life for their offspring if they happen to settle somewhere far away. But there's not really anything they can do. An interesting coral, brain corals, which are very common. They're these big, bulky, kind of spherical dome corals. They are very cool. One of my favorite corals as a kid. One, the Favia genus specifically, has these sweeper tentacles that will go out and sting other corals in something called coral war to prevent other corals from growing that way. So that they have lots of space to grow.
Oh my God.
It's very dramatic. And obviously it is not the most exciting war to watch, because it's just these like very delicate tentacles blowing this way and that, and just lightly touching other corals. But it stings them and says, don't come near me because I'm going to grow really big.
Oh my gosh. So to us, that's like one of the like 4K videos that you put up on your screen, you know, with like some lo-fi music or something in the background. It's like, oh, a beautiful, peaceful, meditative coral reef, peaceful nature. But to them, it's like a complete like Game of Thrones battle
Yeah,
scene.
exactly. It's a lot of fun. And brain corals are all corals are delightfully weird in their own ways. Brain corals have up to a 900-year lifespan, potentially longer. That's the longest we've found. They're so bulky and squat because it protects them against hurricanes. Because while all these other branching corals might get broken, these guys can just kind of hunker down and stay in one place. And their patterns, all these ridges, have been used to develop spherical wheels. There are these like prototype cars that are trying to reinvent the wheel, and they are inspired by brain corals because they have a weird grip strength quality to them that we don't entirely know, because that's not how they work. They aren't gripping to things, but they are extremely effective at it. It's super cool. I just love all of these weird individual corals.
You think a brain coral ever kind of like tips over a little far in one direction, and then they're like, wait a second, we're actually super good at this.
Maybe so. Maybe a brain coral has gotten dislodged and gone rolling around and realized, this might...
Is this anything?
Yeah. There are pom-pom anemones. Anemones are able to pick themselves up and kind of swim badly over to other areas. But pom-pom anemones don't have bases. They don't have a pedal disc. They don't stick anywhere. They just roll around the seafloor, and it's pretty adorable. They're very funny looking. But
like it's an underwater tumbleweed.
Yeah, exactly. There are anthozoa that have sort of developed this rolling mechanic. It's very funny.
Hey friends, we're going to take a quick break to hear from our friends on the Maximum Fun Network. When we get back, we're talking ingenuity and aesthetics for corals, so stay with us.
Hi, is this Sam?
Yes, it is.
I'm Brenda, host of Secret Histories of Nerd Mysteries on Maximum Fun, and I'm calling because you've been named Maximum Fun's Member of the Month for May.
Wow, I'm really excited to hear that. I love being a member. I like all the BOCO, and I enjoy all the shows that I listen to. I love Maximum Fun.
As our Member of the Month, you'll be getting a $25 gift card to the Maximum Fun store, a special Member of the Month bumper sticker, a special priority parking spot at Maximum Fun HQ in Los Angeles, California, just for you.
I can't wait to see what the bumper sticker looks like.
Oh yeah, I am obsessed with bumper stickers. What's your message to people thinking about joining Maximum Fun?
I mean, if you really like the shows, I think it's like a really good way to help support them. I'm really happy I'm able to.
Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you for making your show.
Become a Max Fun member now at MaximumFun.org/join.
It's hard to explain what Jordan Jesse Go is about.
So I had my kids take a stab at it.
Probably weird stuff.
You talk about
jobs that are annoying.
Business. I think you probably learned your lesson after talking about business a couple of times.
Grown-up jokes that I don't understand, and there's no point in making. All the podcasts are boring.
Subscribe to Jordan Jesse Go,
a comedy show for grown-ups.
You mentioned you were studying, how corals find new places, maybe how they navigate, if they're doing any sort of navigating, or if there's like a decision-making process with where they settle. I would like to talk about ingenuity for corals, which I think is often difficult to talk about when we're talking about an animal whose behaviors might be difficult to assess. They're largely sedentary and they move very slowly, so they're operating on a different timetable from us. But ingenuity for us is what we consider behaviors, things the animal is doing, maybe ways that the animal is navigating their environment or making decisions. Jessie, what would you give corals out of 10 for ingenuity?
For ingenuity, I think this is an easy 10. Obviously, I'm slightly biased, but So,
because I'm always giving jellyfish like 2s and stuff.
Oh,
so
no. A jellyfish
like,
firm 10.
box jellies, I did give very high because box jellies had some interesting stuff going on. But how? Where is this happening? What's going on with corals?
As we've talked about, there are fire corals that have evolved this sting. There are brain corals that have evolved this defense against hurricanes. There are deep sea corals that don't even have these endosymbionts. They don't photosynthesize at all. They exclusively use their tentacles because they live miles down, and yet they still form reefs and are super important.
Wow.
There's a reef in Norway that is the northernmost reef we've found, called the Røst Reef, and it's super unique and an important place for all of these like cod and all of these fish that are super important. They all grow up on these deep sea reefs. The coral that I've studied the most is Astrangia poculata. Astrangia means star, poculata means cup, so it's called the northern star coral or the northern cup coral. It is another very northern species. It lives in Massachusetts. And since we think of reefs as being very tropical, this coral is not. And it doesn't form reefs, but it's a very northern coral. And what's interesting, here's where that thing about a polyp and its neighbors comes in. One colony can be part symbiotic and part asymbiotic or aposymbiotic. If you look at a colony, some of them will be brown. They have the endosymbionts and they photosynthesize, and some will be white. They only use their tentacles. And so in the winter, when it gets way too cold and there isn't a lot of sun, they don't use the endosymbionts, they expel them, and they only hunt with their tentacles. And in the summer, they'll have more endosymbionts. And so they'll have all this brown speckling and be able to photosynthesize. They are able to adapt to the environment in a really unique way that we don't see in a lot of animals. It's like how you'll see with ermines or rabbits and Arctic foxes, that they'll have a winter coat and a summer coat. It's sort of like that, but in corals, these animals that are so unique and yet able to adapt in these ways we don't entirely understand. So the 10 for ingenuity is more all of the creative ways that corals express and adapt to their environments that are just so unique. Like a sea pen is like no other coral thing. It's fully unique. It looks like a quill. It looks like a feather. Why?
They're beautiful if you haven't seen one.
They're so beautiful. Yes, I love them.
They're so pretty.
And it is able to filter feed by having stuff brush through its little feathers. I don't know the term for that, but it's super interesting.
Yeah, and even because you mentioned like ermines and rabbits and stuff, when they do, adopt this like winter or summer coat. But this seems so much more dramatic than that because they're also changing like the mechanisms they even use to eat. Yeah. Right? It would be like if an animal was like an herbivore during the winter and a carnivore during the summer. It seems like just like overhauling their entire physiology for the summer.
Yeah. Or if a Venus flytrap suddenly decided, I'll eat bugs half the year, but the rest of the year I'll just be a regular plant. I'll just get rid of these. I'll just get rid of my little mouth. It's so interesting.
I'll just be done with it for a while.
Yeah. And yet these animals have no brain. They have a neural net, so they roughly have nerves and can feel being touched. But despite not having any of these things that we associate with intelligence or even the ability to adapt to an environment, corals are still able to do it in this really unique way.
Okay, I did also want to ask about, you mentioned that the research you were doing in your lab is about how corals find new places. Does it seem like there's like, is this just totally rolling the dice and they're just like, well, where I end up is where I end up and maybe I'll survive and maybe I won't? Or does it seem like they're in any way like navigating or like making some sort of decision about where they're going? Does it seem like they have like a more active role or more passive role in where they end up?
It's active, which is what's really interesting.
Very surprising to me.
Yeah. We study it with Clidia, which is a hydrozoan jellyfish, a medusa.
Also a pretty name.
Yes, Clidia hemispherica. Very pretty. But we see that the planula will choose not to settle if it's not perfect. We don't know how. We assume it's something to do with the microbiome. But, like, we've done lots of treatments on slides. If you treat one slide with this thing, and this one has bacteria from this tank, and this one has a little bit of algae from this tank, they will choose where to go. And even these slides have part that's a frosted edge, just because that's kind of the microscope slides we just happen to have in lab. They won't choose that side.
Don't like it.
Which is interesting.
Vibes are off.
Yeah, even if it's all treated with the same stuff, they very rarely will choose this one side that just looks different, or maybe has a slight textural difference. it seems like a very active role, which is what makes it such an interesting and exciting area that hasn't really been studied before. Because they have no brain. We don't know how they're choosing this, but they will not settle. Like, jellyfish will not settle their larvae anywhere that is not perfect for them.
It's like when you invite them to a party, they ask who's going before they RSVP.
Oh, yeah. They have to know.
Who's there? Where's it at?
What species are nearby? Is it a rock of this specific type?
Is my ex going to be there?
Yeah, exactly. We can't have the exes there.
Is anyone going to be wearing the same dress as me?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's the dress code? Listen, I get it. You know, this is a commitment, especially for these guys that are like, they're going to be there for 900 years.
Yeah.
They need to commit.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. You know, I get being picky and choosy. If it's somewhere that you're going to be for a long time, it's kind of like how I very, very rarely go see movies because I'm extremely picky about the way I'm going to be spending 4 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if I'm going to be going to a movie theater, getting settled in, you know, that's going to be my evening. It's got to be a pretty good movie. So I get it. I get it. I'm about it. Protect your peace, corals.
Yeah, exactly.
Do they have senses? Can they perceive their environment?
They can. We know they have chemical sensory something or other. And we know that their tentacles retract when they feel that something has entered them, so they can eat. Or if you get too close, they'll suck in because they're afraid of being touched. The hard skeleton, since it's basically just rock, doesn't. But all of the tissue can respond to stimuli, and that's from the neural net. That is sort of part of the reason we recognize them as animals. Sponges are very much on the edge because they can't produce their own food on their own, which is what makes them animals, but also they don't have any sort of nervous system at all. They're just sort of rocks that can eat. That's why sponges aren't my area of interest. I want to get a little farther into
I feel like they're in on a technicality.
Yeah, that's kind of how it is. But it's crazy that these animals are so simple and yet are able to choose and respond all of these things. That's why I point out that the way we judge intelligence is so interesting because it applies to human intelligence. By any stretch of the imagination, corals are not smart. They don't have brains. They just sort of sit there and eat and will be given food and energy by their endosymbionts. But at the same time, they're able to choose where they live. They're able to choose when they settle. They can stay as planula, as little larvae, for however long as they're eating, which they can do. So we don't judge them as being intelligent, and yet they're able to do all of these super unique things that show that they have some level of understanding and they receive inputs from the world in a way that is, if not intelligent, at least interesting. You know, there's something there.
Yeah, they're acting on information, which is in the same way that we do, you know. You take in stimuli from your world and behave accordingly. It just happens on a scale that can be very difficult for a human to see because it's so slow or it's so tiny and microscopic, or even on such a big scale, right? Like if it's just thousands of these polyps doing it, it can be hard to zoom out. Do they sort of behave as a unit, in the way that some kind of like an ant colony might?
It's hard to explain their behavior because when one polyp eats, yes, the food is theoretically spread to the others, and so one polyp eating can help its neighbors, but it's hard to say whether it acts or thinks as a whole. The neural nets are interconnected, and they can all respond. So if you have a really big coral colony and you touch one end, all of them will retract, because they're all kind of thrown off. So there's some level of a hive mind, but at the same time, they're still distinct from each other. And if there's one that is a little bit, by genetic mutation, a little bit different, and so it doesn't like this one food or is unable to eat it, then that one acts independently, which is why it gets so tricky to say what is the individual, which is just one of those debates that I love. I love studying animals that are weird and kind of hard to talk about. It's just delightful.
I don't remember if this is a connection that I have made in a previous episode or not, but when you're talking about the brain coral, right, that can live for hundreds and hundreds of years, is it the same polyps the whole time, or are they dying off and regenerating? And I guess I'm working towards a brain coral of Theseus.
Yes, exactly.
At what point is it an entirely new batch of polyps that's just the same colony has been living for hundreds of years?
So, to my knowledge, the polyps are not replaced. Obviously, like with us, how we shed skin cells, The tissue cells will change over time and be different, but it's still the same polyp. They aren't destroyed and replaced by a new one over time. It just gets bigger. It doesn't change what it has. So these are the same polyps, if not the exact same cells, that have always been there.
That does make me think about like how we, our bodies are constantly like regenerating, and like at what point do you have a new body?
Exactly. Yeah.
When are you a new person?
Oh, the classic ship of Theseus. Just, it's wild. I love it.
If you have, for example, one colony of coral and then a neighboring colony of coral, maybe they're the same species, but perhaps not genetically identical to each other, right? Maybe they're from a different, or are all species, like, is every member of the species identical to each other at that point? I'm just wondering if, like, two colonies meet. How do they know that they're different, or do they just kind of, like, accept each other?
They know that they're different. They won't merge.
Really?
And it's an interesting level of, like, they can recognize self. And one of the markers for animal intelligence that we use is, like, if you put a dot on an animal and then show it a mirror, do they recognize that that's me with the dot? Corals, they don't have eyes, so there's no way of testing that, but they're able to recognize self versus other. And
right, because they're able to say, well, that's not me. Like, wow, or at least not us, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's not one of me. And so, therefore, I won't. Wow. Even if they're like the same species?
Even the same species, the colonies won't merge. Obviously, they can reproduce, and when they release sperm and eggs, they'll interact. But also, corals are hermaphrodites, so one colony, one coral, might release sperm and eggs and, self-reproduce. But, yeah, they're able to recognize self.
A Romeo and Juliet story.
Yes.
Corals from different colonies, star-crossed lovers.
Yes.
That's how Romeo and Juliet should have ended.
Oh, I wish.
That would have been a way better ending.
And it's the full moon. It's such a beautiful, dramatic scene.
R.I.P. Shakespeare, you would have loved corals.
Yeah. And they probably did. They loved corals. Corals, getting into the aesthetics, were seen as gemstones.
I was about to say, like, since we were talking about the romance of it and it's a beautiful story under the full moon, let's talk aesthetics. How nice is this animal to look at? What do you give him out of 10?
I'm giving them an 8. Obviously, nowadays, and looking at a lot of coral reefs, they aren't these, like, bright Lisa Frank images that I kind of had in my head as a kid. Like, the first time I snorkeled a reef, I was like, it's all just kind of different shades of brown, which they're not. They are, like, purple and green, and Hawaii, the reefs are not as colorful as, like, Raja Ampat in Indonesia or places like that. But they're still just so cool. Like, they almost look like cities, living in Chicago. All of the buildings have their own unique architecture, and even though they're all kind of the same shades of gray, it's still just, like, beautiful to look at the skyline. So, I mean, there's a reason, like, I don't remember if it was Plato or just one of the other early ancient scholars kind of thought of corals as a gemstone and a plant. Somehow both. They were made into jewelry all the time. We have lots of ancient red coral jewelry. So they have always been thought of as beautiful and precious.
That had to have been Pliny the Elder to be wrong on both counts. That had to have been him.
Yeah. He's so fun to read.
Love being wrong about stuff. His favorite thing to do.
Absolutely. I mean, Plato is no stranger to it either.
In the Seattle Art Museum, I saw this exhibition that maybe it's still up, maybe it's not. They had a whole exhibition of art that was made out of like coral that had been like brought up from shipwrecks or something like that. And they were real. I mean, it looked like lace almost. And a lot of them looked like really intricate lace.
Yeah.
They can be really, really beautiful.
Really beautiful. Yeah, here at University of Chicago, we have the Institute for the Study of Ancient Cultures. And so you've got ancient Mesopotamian cultures still having these rings made out of coral. It's just so beautiful that they appreciated them back then, even if they were perhaps very confused by these weird organisms that are plants and rocks and animals, which a lot of people still kind of think they are. They recognize the beauty that I and a lot of us still see in them, even if they weren't scuba diving regularly.
I do feel like the dynamic of feeling like like you mentioned, like how it reminds you of a city, especially if you see a coral reef with lots of fish swimming around. And I feel like Finding Nemo nailed that.
Yes,
like
absolutely.
Having like the fish where like it really feels like a bustling city where you've got like schools of fish all swimming like they're like, cars driving down a street or something. I feel like that really nailed how a coral reef feels when you watch one.
Yeah.
It does look like that to me because every little fish has their little lives and they all are doing different things and foraging and hunting in different ways. So, and the coral just provides such a beautiful space for that too.
Exactly. Well, they've got their own drama going on with the brain corals fighting each other for space.
They're like, we have our own drama.
Exactly.
And then also drama around them. They bring drama everywhere they go.
Yes, yeah. They're the villains of the reality TV show. Every time they're on screen, they're causing problems.
But the villain that just like lurks in the background.
Yes.
Like Christian and I, Christian mostly, whenever we watch a movie, he tries to be the first one to call the secret bad guy. Mm-hmm. He'll say it like it's become such a game when we watch movies or a TV show or something. He'll try to like within the first 5 to 10 minutes try to be like secret bad guy. It's the corals all along. They were there the whole time.
Exactly.
Scheming.
Big schemers.
Do you have a favorite coral?
Probably my Astrangia, since I've worked with them. The star corals that are so unique. The lab I worked in does lots of experiments with them, including depth cycling, that perhaps to keep them alive at night, put them down in the dark where they are able to feed using their tentacles, but then during the day bring them up just so they have less time exposed to the super warm surface water. There's so many interesting things. They're a great model organism because the polyps are super big, so you can see them super well, which is helpful. A lot of corals, they're very small. You can kind of see that there are tentacles.
I did pull up a picture. These things are pretty cute.
They're very cute. They're not the most colorful, but they're very pretty.
If you struggle with trypophobia, don't Google them.
Yeah, corals are not for people who are afraid of a lot of little holes, especially dead bleach corals when you just see the kind of hollows where the polyps used to be. But yes, I love Astrangia. I've done sample collection dives for them, and it's just a great time.
If anyone is listening to this and is, obviously we're Team Coral, and is maybe feeling for the plight of the coral and for the reefs, do you know of any like action items? Like what could a person listening do to help like support reefs or be a good steward?
I think the biggest thing is to just be interested in them and talk about them. A lot of people don't even know they're alive, and that makes it a rough starting place. People never argued whether pandas were alive or, whether they're animals.
And that, I think, adds stakes to, because I think a lot of people know about coral reef bleaching, but I think a lot of people think that is an aesthetic issue, that is just, they just look duller now and they just don't look as good. And I think if you don't know that those are actual living animals, you don't realize that what we're looking at is a graveyard, right?
Yes.
Like what we're looking at is like a landscape of death. And so I think once you understand that they're animals and know like what's really going on with them, I feel like that makes that issue more impactful.
Yeah. If you are visiting a reef, don't touch the coral. Please admire them, but don't touch them.
For mutual benefit.
Yeah. Because who knows, you might be lucky enough to stumble upon a fire coral and you don't want to go through that whole ordeal. Wear reef-safe sunscreen. Just try to avoid putting chemicals into the water that are going to hurt the corals. But unfortunately, the big thing right now is just advocate for the protection of marine ecosystems. It is rough for a lot of these areas that have reefs are protected, meaning you can't fish them, you can't like spearfish or regular fish, you can't collect things from them, and that's really important, but taking that away is very bad for the corals that are just trying to survive and evolved in a world where that wasn't a fight, they had to fight. Right. So a very important thing is just knowing about corals, advocating for corals, and just enjoying them. Like they're great. A lot of pet stores, if you want to see a coral, pet stores will have very colorful morphs and you can look at them. They're just so interesting. I really recommend looking up close at corals and just seeing all of the weird little things going on with them. So I recommend learning more, and if you feel so compelled, writing letters, making phone calls, and just advocating for these wonderful organisms that, without reefs, we don't have fish. Reefs are such important nurseries for all of this. Everything people like about the ocean is basically dependent on reefs.
Yeah, they're kind of the building blocks, the sort of fundamental ecosystem. Like, it's all on their shoulders.
Exactly.
So we need to, do our best to make the world a kind and gentle place on our corals. And for anyone listening who is maybe inspired and wants to learn more about corals or wants to keep up with, the work that you're doing, where can people go next?
I love to talk about corals. If you want to reach out, my school email is jjpalmer@uchicago.edu. My Instagram, where I yap about animals and books and musicals and just whatever. But a lot of mostly weird little critters that I am fascinated by in that moment is at Jessie Siphonophore, which is just impossible. JESSIE SIPHONOPHORAE. If you want to learn more about corals, honestly, I am a big advocate for Wikipedia. Obviously, don't use it as like a primary source if you're writing something, but there are so many little rabbit holes you can fall down that I think it's a great resource to just go to the Wikipedia page and it'll mention like, here's an ancient, extinct, fossilized species of coral, and so you look into that, and so you look into all of these things. So if you want to learn more about corals and are starting kind of from this being maybe the first time you've really thought about them that deeply, I recommend just go to Wikipedia. Just if you want, I collect like old biology textbooks, and so they're so out of date and so bad a lot of the time and don't know anything about corals. If you have a library nearby and you can access these, it's really fun to see how people used to think about these animals and how they think about them now and the ways that has changed. There's a lot there. Also, as I mentioned, my work in progress paper will be out in UChicago's Scientia magazine. I don't have a link. Maybe I will send that to you, so if it can go in a description or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there's a lot about corals to learn about. There's a lot about Hydra. If you want to talk about Hydra, please email me. I would love to. If there's anything weird about the ocean or books or anything you want to yap about, absolutely send me an email. I love responding to emails from people. So being a second year in college and having gone through a lot of struggling to figure out what my path should look like to go into marine biology, I also love to talk about that. If you're stressed about college admissions or figuring out where to go or how to get into these programs, like this research I've done at the MBL, please reach out. I've been through it, and I went through it recently. I have a lot of exciting things I would love to talk about. So yeah, don't hesitate to reach out.
Perfect. And I will have links to everything that you mentioned in the episode description, so anybody listening can just go to the episode description and click through and follow along with your work. Jessie, this has been so enlightening and so much fun. I feel like I have learned so much about an animal that I'm now ashamed to say had not occupied that much space in my noggin, but now has grown and bloomed and flourished into a beautiful reef in all of our hearts. So thank you, Jessie, for spending this time with us. Thank you for your time and your knowledge and your passion. And we will talk to you later.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you all so much for listening. I hope that the coral reef in your heart is alive and thriving and full of vibrant, beautiful colors. If you liked what you heard, I hope you leave behind some kind words for us in a review on your podcast app of choice. If you'd like to hang out with us online, we're on Facebook, Instagram, Discord. Links to everything will be in the episode description. You can also send me an email at ellen@justthezooofus.com if you have a cool animal you would like to hear us talk about on the show. Also, just a reminder, we are still looking for kid questions for Isaac's next Kid Questions episode. So if you have any young listeners with any burning questions about animals or nature or the podcast or us, please do email those in with kid question in the subject line. We'd also like to thank Maximum Fun for having us on their network alongside their other amazing shows like the ones that you heard promos for here today. You can go check those out, learn more about the network, how you can be a part of supporting our show, and get access to our exclusive monthly bonus episodes over at MaximumFun.org. Finally, we would like to thank Louis Zong for our theme music. That's all for today. We'll see you next week. Thanks. Bye.
Maximum Fun,
a worker-owned network
of artist-owned shows.
Supported
directly
by you.